Hi, everybody. Welcome to the February 2nd, 2018 Groundhog's Day edition of Colorado Inside Out Postgame, a special web-exclusive production here in Channel 12. We finished the whole show talking about 19th century French poetry, and now we're going to get into something else. Let's get a quick take on an effort to call attention to the impact of the decision by U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions to rescind protections on marijuana regulations. A Colorado-led coalition has published a letter in the Washington Times saying the decision created uncertainty for local governments by leaving federal enforcement decisions up to each individual U.S. attorney, resulting in what could be selective and unfair enforcement. Joey Bunch from Colorado Politics. Marijuana is always going to be a big issue here, but this particular U.S. Attorney General, and we have, I think, a lot of attempts at least to clarify what's going on. What do you make of what we heard this week?
Well, it's complicated politics. It's a bucket of snakes that just got dumped on the floor, especially for Republicans, because Republicans in Colorado have embraced marijuana, and we just saw a poll in the last week or so that says 2/3 of Coloradans now think that Colorado is handling marijuana the same way. If Republicans get on the wrong side of this issue, it could be a long road to November.
Amy Cook, a head muckety-muck of the Independence Institute, thank you for joining us. This is big on a lot of different levels because it isn't just like one city or else in Colorado. It's the whole state. And you have a U.S. Attorney General. This is big players. This isn't just some sort of memo somewhere. What did we see this week? What do we need to be paying attention to?
So. The outrage at Sessions is misdirected, I think. Sessions is doing his job. The outrage should be at Colorado's congressional delegation. You know what? It's about time we see how much influence they actually have in Washington, D.C. They should be convincing the federal government to change the marijuana laws so that Colorado, there is no conflict between the states and the feds. This outrage at Jeff Sessions, I think, is really just a straw man. What we really need to do is we need a change in federal law, and California and Colorado and the other pot states should be getting together and convincing all their other colleagues that what we have done in Colorado is good for their states too, or not. They don't have to do it. But that's who they should be working on, is the Colorado congressional delegation. Change the law at the federal level, and if you don't, we're going to continue to have this conflict regardless of who's in the AG's seat.
Eric Sonnen, political analyst. Amy raises a good point, but we've seen how changing laws that have been entrenched on the federal level for a long time, see immigration or almost anything else that we've been talking about on the table lately, goes sometimes. Is this something that has to simply go through Congress, or is this an executive branch situation?
Well, for the time being, it's an executive branch situation. Two quick thoughts. One, there's a lot to what Amy suggests here. And you got to get out of a cycle of this yin and yang between administrations, Democratic administration, Republican administration, Trump administration, or Trump Sessions administration versus whatever may come next, et cetera. Get away from the yin and yang. Ultimately, this is statutory. It should not be regulatory. So Amy's point, at least in terms of theoretical politics, is dead on the mark. But that day is probably not here yet. So until that day arrives, this is going to be an administrative regulatory decision. To Joey's point, I'm not sure I'd phrase it the same way in terms of Republicans in Colorado having embraced marijuana. I think what Republicans in Colorado have embraced is state and local rights. And even, not worshiping at the marijuana industry or marijuana lobby myself, I certainly worship at the concept of federalism and states being able to go their own path. And, a huge majority, a number of states representing a huge majority of the population of this country has dramatically changed their policy for better or worse on marijuana in the last several years, going on decade. And ultimately that will be reflected in Washington, but hopefully that's sooner rather than later.
Scott Wasserman, president of the Bell Policy Center, joins us for the first time at the panel. Thank you for being here. What do you make of what we're seeing so far? Is it going to be a Colorado versus Jeff Sessions thing, or is it a Colorado needs to get off the pot and do something about it on the congressional level?
Here's what I think is interesting, and I couldn't agree more with Amy and Eric that this needs to become a federal law change. But in the meantime, one can't help but notice that it tends to be blue states or purple with a bluish hue states like Colorado that have legalized marijuana. And I think this letter makes the point that what the rescinding of the Cole memo does is essentially makes it possible to politically weaponize marijuana enforcement. And the second that happened, I thought to myself, just you wait and see. A U.S. attorney in a blue state on the eve of an election is going to go after some random dispensary or somebody who's connected to the industry. And so absolutely, now we're in this sort of political no man's land where these U.S. attorneys have enormous discretion. And who's to say in this era when everything is politicized that you won't see this sort of politically weaponized and used for electoral purposes?
Politically weaponized marijuana. Sounds like a strain, but it sounds that's a good point. It's a good point. That's all the time we have for CIO Postgame this week. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you think. For everyone here at CPT12.org, I'm Dominic Dezzutti. Thanks for watching.